Hi guys, welcome to week 8 of Online Comp 1. Sorry things are a little bit late this week. Like I told you, I was out of town a bit last week at a conference. Snow day on Monday and I was in Jeff City yesterday, so it's just been kind of a crazy week. Um, just a couple of announcements. Tomorrow, Friday afternoon, I will be working on getting caught up with grading, especially those quizzes from a couple of weeks ago. I'm sorry that it's taken um, a bit longer than normal to grade those. I think something that you'll find about college classes in your future is that compared to high school classes, oftentimes it seems like sometimes I think it feels perhaps like you do less work because it's more about quality than quantity, if that makes sense. Because if you think about it, my in-person Comp 1 classes this semester, I meet with them 3 hours a week. We do class discussions and lecture, and they, are working on papers throughout that time. And I think that you guys have more time in the classroom. Um, so so I don't know, and that's something that we'll talk about in the coming weeks in terms of how your experience in this class has felt. Um, so that's just conversations to have, but do realize that the work that you're doing, the rigor that I'm expecting is basically exactly what's happening in my college Comp 1 classes. So just kind of know that. And I think that also sometimes college instructors are a bit slower at grading. At least I feel that way right now. So again, I apologize for not getting some of those grades to you right away, but we'll get caught up. And now is the time this semester um, for all of your classes, not just this one, to really feel like you're on top of things because May is going to be here before you know it. And I know for you guys, this is the time of year where you have sports and plays and prom and all kinds of things. So just be sure to keep on top of all your classes. So in May, you can feel really good about finishing successfully. And as always, let me know if you have any questions or concerns. This week, you are going to work a little bit on a continuation of what you read and discussed last week, and then start a new short essay. So first of all, last week I had you read The Ballad of the Bullet by Malcolm X. And what I would like for you to do in the forum this week is I've posed 3 questions for discussion. And this week I would like for you in your first post, which will be due by Monday at noon, a little bit extra time than normal, I'd like for you to answer all 3 of those discussion prompts. And then by next Wednesday at noon, respond to at least one classmate, try to get in good discussion about it. So what I'm asking you to do is kind of a first step at comparative analysis. So if you think about, you have these 2 texts, the letter from Birmingham jail, which you have read and annotated and discussed and written about, and then also The Ballad or the Bullet, a speech that Malcolm X gave. And I've also linked to audio of him giving that speech, and it's lengthy, but I would like for you to at least listen to a few minutes of it just so you can kind of hear what the speech sounds like. So what I'd like for you to consider in the forum and start thinking about is how you can look at the rhetorical situation or the rhetorical triangle, the speaker or writer, the subject, and the audience. So it's imperative to think about that when you're analyzing a text because that completely changes the language that a speaker or writer uses and the appeals that he or she uses. And then next you would think about the rhetorical appeals, the ethos, the pathos, and the logos. So I'm not asking you to be quite as involved in The Ballad of the Bullet as you were in Letter from Birmingham Jail, but I would like for you to use those same analytical tools as you read it and listen to a little bit of it. And consider some of these issues in the discussion forum. And I'd also like for you to think about, as I pose the question in the discussion forum, that oftentimes we when we learn about African American heroes from the civil rights movement. We hear about Rosa Parks and we hear about Martin Luther King Jr. And I'd like for you to look at these two texts and think about why we don't hear more, perhaps, about Malcolm X and learn more about him, and think about what it might have been like to be a white audience or a black audience in the 1960s, hearing these rhetorical appeals and these arguments. So I'd like for you to just consider that, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in depth. Also, this week, you'll be doing a more formal comparative analysis. So the assignment that you have, the writing assignment that you'll be working on, is looking at two suffrage speeches from two different women, not at the exact same time period, but within the same time period, arguing for women's right to vote. And read over the comparative analysis handout that I've given you, kind of how we do that, how we try to compare two texts. And you don't need to do any further research. I've given you two websites to look at to briefly research Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth. And I would like for you to write a short essay. It'll be 2 or 3 pages, and I've given you the sources that you need to use. You don't need to wander outside of them. And I would like for you to consider the rhetorical situation and the rhetorical appeals that these two women use, and think about kind of why and how. So Sojourner Truth gives a speech to the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio, and this is just a piece of interesting information. Oftentimes, if you look online for Sojourner Truth's speech, it's called Ain't I a Woman, and it has very Southern dialect and is written in a way that makes it sound like she was from the South. Sojourner Truth couldn't read or write, so the two surviving versions of the speech that she gave are very different. And the one that is most known is not the one that I gave you, but it's this one where there's a lot of Southern dialect, and it is thought to be the much less precise one. However, the secretary of the organization that publicized this speech of hers, we talk about how she kind of used that Southern dialect to make it sound like Sojourner Truth was even perhaps less educated, or kind of had the stereotypical black dialect of someone from the South, when in reality, Sojourner Truth, her first language was Dutch, and she was a freed slave, but she had lived in the North, so it's highly implausible that she had had this kind of Southern dialect. But the woman who wanted to kind of, and the group who wanted to use her speech as kind of a marketing tool, wanted to make her sound more Southern and more stereotypical. So what we do with language and how we shape language and kind of use it to build arguments is really fascinating. And the Sojourner Truth, the differing speeches, is a really good example. But the one that I've given you is considered by historians to be much more accurate. On the other hand, Susan B. Anthony was a highly educated white woman. She's giving this speech in a courtroom because she's been arrested for trying to vote for president. So think very carefully about ethos, pathos, and logos and their rhetorical situations and their audiences, and perhaps why their speeches are different for all of those reasons. So have a works cited page, cite your sources, and again, I've given you those sources, so use your handbook, but you don't need to go beyond those sources. And that will be due, you'll upload your Word document by next Friday at noon. Next Wednesday, we'll kind of start a new class week, so it'll be one of those weeks that there is a little bit of an overlap. And we'll just kind of keep going from there. We have one more week. We'll be talking about synthesis. I'll give you a couple of news editorials, and we'll try to synthesize them. Then we'll watch another short video, and we'll kind of move into well, we already are in the second half of the semester, but where you will be really working on building your own arguments the rest of the semester. So we have a lot of fun stuff up ahead. Work hard, be sure that you kind of know what's expected, and be keeping up with your journal. And let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Have a good one.